I know it seems like this one is farther apart. Maybe just how the month fell.
I think I missed one.
Hi, we're live. Welcome to our monthly Money Smart for Small Business series here at the Bioscience Center and also sponsored by FatPipe ABQ. Today we have Heather Johnson, we have Heather Johnson, who's a portfolio manager and vice president with New Mexico Bank and Trust, our sponsor for this series. Today's topic is record keeping, and if you want to register for next month, the class topics will be banking services for small business, which I imagine Heather's even more of an expert on than all of our other topics. So join us then, and that date is July 20th. So welcome, hi to everyone who's live, and I'll let Heather take over.
Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be going through some record keeping basics. As always, we want everybody to participate. I think we're all really good about that and getting people to go. First, we're going to start off with some introductions. So Lisa said, I'm Heather Johnson. I'm with New Mexico Bank and Trust. I work in the commercial department doing portfolio management. And if you could give a little bit about yourself and what brought you here today, and maybe just a brief snippet about how you currently do record keeping. Just, is it paper-based? Is it a computer system? What's sort of your current situation? Misty, do you want to start?
Okay, I'm Misty Witt. I work here at the Bioscience Center and FatPipe ABQ with Lisa. And I also have a small accounting and bookkeeping business of my own. And my record keeping is kind of a mix. I prefer electronic. I like to scan things and save them electronically versus paper. But some of my clients like paper, so.
Again, my name is Lisa Adkins. I run FatPipe ABQ in the Bioscience Center. Our other company that we're starting this month, I'm allowed to now announce it. It's called Ingenuity Software Labs, Inc. It's a partnership with C&M Ingenuity, and my partner is John Mirswa. So we will be a custom software development shop. And my background, I specialize in Microsoft SharePoint implementation, so everything that I do is electronic. All of my record keeping is done in SharePoint. I've never even heard of that.
Me neither.
It's an amazing platform.
I didn't realize it did that.
Organizations, even small organizations, it's a great platform.
Look into that. See, I'm already learning something. I'm Kendra Loring. I own, Enchanted Equine Adventures, and this is my 4th year in business. And I'm kind of old school. I like paper. I like writing. So I use a calendar. I use my phone calendar, and then I transfer everything every quarter to Excel and do my taxes that way. So it's pretty basic.
Okay.
My name is Ernest Gonzalez, and I train dogs, I watercolor paint, and I have a dove release business, all 3 in 1. And I have a paper calendar, and I just use the pen and paper, which my wife is not very proud of.
I'm Ramona Zamir Gonzalez, and I currently work full-time for the City of Albuquerque Legal Department. So I attempt to help him with his record keeping, doing invoices primarily through Excel, and then we print them out. He takes them to his customer and they pay that way, and then we've been trying to do more spreadsheets, but being working full-time already, I don't have a lot of time to help him with his business, although that's going to change in October when I retire. And so we had talked about using QuickBooks to help him better manage invoicing and for tax purposes at the end of the year and biannually. And we didn't really get very far as exploring that and any other options out there, so we thought this would be a good way to kind of find out a little bit more about record keeping, invoicing, tax, that kind of thing. We had to
Misty's your girl too. Very affordable bookkeeping services.
This was the first year we had to pay a lot in federal taxes, so ooh-hoo, yeah. Maybe you could help us with that.
So I'm Eva Fain, and I'm a new business owner, and the business is actually me doing diabetes education. And so I went back to paper. I was a failure at electronic. It was taking more time. I used to do accounting for the phone company, and we did it mostly paper and then to electronic, so it's just easier for me. I'm developing a web presence right now, and it's just a lot easier to not be spending the business part online.
I'm Kimberly. I am the marrying minister. I marry couples in love. I haven't had a wedding since I've been in New Mexico this year. I want to learn about record keeping because I don't want to have to owe those bad guys. And QuickBooks seems to be all over the internet. Basically, is what a lot of people use and supposed to be very friendly. And since I'm not technologically inclined, I thought I'd kind of lean that way, or Misty when I can afford her. But I haven't even started record keeping yet. So.
It sounds like everybody's kind of all over the gambit, which is good. And I think the important thing to remember is it doesn't matter what your system is so much as you use it regularly, you're updating it, and you are keeping track of what you have, whatever your system might be, and to make sure, and change it as you need to. As you start off, maybe paper works, but as you suddenly have 50 clients, maybe that doesn't make sense. So being open to making changes as you're going along. So today we're going to cover some basic concepts of record keeping, its importance, identifying record keeping practices and tools, and explain how they all kind of work together. So to that end, we have a test, of course. If you guys want to do the pre-test real quick, you don't have to share your answers, but it's just for you to kind of look at what do you know now and what do you think you might know.
Open the paper bag. But at least you're not talking.
She gets an A on that quiz, by the way.
It's already moved over to the other one, right?
So the definition they provide, the term record keeping refers to the orderly and disciplined practice of storing business records. And then it talks about this bold statement, which I think, the success of your business depends on creating and maintaining an effective record system. And I have to admit, when I read that the first time and going through this, I was like, wow, I'm not sure I agree with that. But then as I kept thinking about it, it really does make a big difference as what your record keeping system looks like as to what you can go back to and refer to help you out for the future. So do you guys agree that record keeping is one of the most, depends on the success of your business, or?
I think it would be a huge percentage of it based on the fact that what little I know and have read and heard from different small business owners, if you don't have good bookkeeping practices or someone doing it that you're in communication with, you're not going to know where your business stands and where it needs to change to get to the success that you've defined for yourself.
As a person who specializes in record keeping, what would you say? I mean,
As to if it's dependent on the success, I would say absolutely. I think that a lot of companies fail because they don't keep proper records. They don't keep track of their money. They don't know where it's going. Also, your a lot more liable for penalties. That's probably the main thing that I see. People don't keep their records and they get some kind of tax penalty. Or,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It can be expensive not to be good record keeping. Costs you more than you want.
absolutely.
So record keeping ranges from a simple manila folder system to complex online electronic systems. I think a lot of people like the idea of franchises too, because typically the franchise has developed some sort of record keeping system to go with their business, and so it's a selling point. There are lots of companies that make a lot of money, QuickBooks, on being a record keeping business. So clearly it's a multi-billion-dollar company industry out there to help you manage your business.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I would like to add that yes, QuickBooks is a good record-keeping tool, but ultimately you still have to be the one to keep your records. You have to go in there and you have to enter it. You have to have the receipts or the amounts or whatever. So it still depends on you and your organization. I mean, it's there to help you, but it won't do it for you.
It goes back to that discipline process. What is your process? When are you going to do it? You mentioned quarterly, you put everything in. So that's your discipline every quarter. As you get more clients, maybe it switches to monthly or even daily, just depending.
Get 5 minutes to actually sit in front of a computer, I would definitely do that.
So you're sitting down and having to re-enter them. correct?
Yeah, I mean, so most of the time, and it depends on the client, I've had clients hand me a box of receipts, or I've had clients that send me emails after every single transaction, so whatever's fine, but you still have to go into QuickBooks and enter that, so.
Or hire somebody to do it for you.
Right.
And record keeping is not just accounting.
Nope.
So I use QuickBooks too for the accounting side, but it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my horse's health depends upon my record keeping.
Yeah.
If I don't keep up with who's vaccinated with what, and, you know, I could lose one of my assets.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's true.
If you have a vehicle with your business, the maintenance of your vehicle, also personnel records, we're going to talk about those too. Those are important to keep track of. Also included in this, as a business owner, it's very important to keep your personal records and keep them separate from your business records, but you want to keep all of your personal items too. When you go to a bank and ask for a loan, they're going to want to know your personal side and they're going to want to know your business side. So keeping track of your personal records is just as important as your business. This also does give a website. For more information, go to sba.gov and search record keeping as some more solutions. And there's a lot of those as we go through this particular one. So, orderly and disciplined. I think those are the two words. If you remember nothing else from today other than orderly and disciplined. Update on an ongoing basis. And keep them both for your business and personal. So why does the success of your business depend on record keeping? Well, some of it is business operations, detail tracking, planning, legal, and taxes. We've already touched on some of those. So we'll go through each one. So business operations. What are some of the things you might track? Customer records. If you don't remember your customers, then how are you going to remember what they like, what they want the next time they come in? Also, maybe remembering birthdays. It might help you if you sent them a card. But if you have a record of that birthday, then you can easily send out birthday cards to say, hey, I'm thinking of you. Sales records. You want to keep those for multiple reasons, right? Knowing what you sold, what's working, what's not. Maybe a certain wedding ceremony sells better than another wedding ceremony, but if you don't have those records to keep track of it, then you're not going to know. Correspondence, you want to save things. Maybe a customer asked you, they wanted to get married at the gazebo in Old Town, and that's what they said, and then all of a sudden the day before the wedding, they're like, oh no, we told you we were having it in Santa Fe. That could be an additional cost and change everything. But if you don't have the records saying what they originally said,
Exactly.
you could have some problems.
Yeah.
And inventory. This is a huge one because your inventory affects your cash flow. If you order up too much at a time when you're not going to be selling, then all of a sudden all of your cash is sitting in your inventory and you're not able to use it. versus if you're able to track what you have. The other side of that too is if it's a really busy season and you haven't ordered up and your customers come to you and say, hey, we want XYZ, and you don't have it available, well, you just lost a sale. So keeping track of your inventory year to year, month to month, depending on the seasonality of your business, can really make a huge difference to know what you should order and when you should order it. You know, maybe all your customers last year liked a certain product, and if you have the records to know which one to order heavy on, you'll order heavy on that again next year, rather than trying to be like, I think that water bottle sold better than that water bottle, so I'm gonna order a lot of those, and guess what? You picked the wrong water bottle. All these things, all these details. It's a lot of details. So that helps with the planning of your business. Also, legal compliance. As an owner, you might execute contracts and be required to hold various licenses and permits. So those are also important. Contracts, leases, and other agreements, anything you might set up, those are all very important to keep. Always maintain original signed copies of your legal contracts. It's good to scan them in so you know where to find them, but then keep it someplace where you store important documents. It might be a good idea to have a fireproof cabinet. They're a little bit more expensive. You don't have to buy a big one, but if you have a small one, at least for pertinent, important documents, it's not a bad idea. And you never think it'll happen to you until it happens to you. So I think my stuff, oh, we're still on the same slide. Other things that are important to your business, licenses and permits. And I'm also want to add on this one, your articles of incorporation and bylaws. Banks are going to ask those always. If you open up a new checking account, if you want to come in for a loan, you might think once you started your organization and you have all of it, you're good to go, but you're going to always need that type of things. Your city business license, I believe on it, it says hang somewhere that it's visible. You want to keep those in a pertinent place. Any type of special permit that your business has. I don't know if working with animals, you need to have some sort of special business license. People who work in food obviously need a food prep license. If you work out of your home, perhaps you need a permit in order to work out of your home. So those are all licenses that you want to keep your records for. And then also very important is your payroll and personnel. And I would not keep these close to where your personnel is. You want to keep them either locked or on an off-site location, because you never know who might come in your office and open your drawer and want to look in their personnel records, or even worse, someone else's. So.
Well, there's a lot of federal laws regarding HIPAA and, you know, confidential.
Yes,
and
especially medical.
Your employees' social security numbers and such, yes.
Yes.
It should be double locked, I imagine.
So you
I
need.
don't know if will you get cited if they're not double locked? The standard in medical stuff is double.
I'm sure if you got audited, you'd get, if they found out, you'd definitely get trouble.
Right. I mean, home care, I used to keep the people's records in my trunk in a locked box. That's a standard of care. Otherwise, if somebody like rear-ended my car and I was taken to the hospital,
Right, everything would be available.
Everything would be available for someone to read. Supposed to be. That happens.
Yeah. We have very specific standards in banking too. We have to keep all of our customer information locked up and away.
It's a double locked, probably for banking too, right? So you can't get into it easily.
Right, you can't. Yeah,
It's
everything's
locked in
away.
the cabinet, which is locked in the office or whatever.
Also in those would be any sort of evaluation documentation or any sort of write-ups if you have an employee that isn't performing the way you'd like them to. Those would also go in there. Why you're paying them the wage they are, so that you have proof later on if you ever need to. Their hours, their withholdings, all of that information. And then under the irs.gov website, if you search for publication 15 and go to the link for Circular E Employer's Tax Guide, that will help you with some of the record keeping requirements for payroll and personnel. And then, of course, at the end of the year, or quarterly or monthly, your federal and state and local tax preparation, your record keeping can help you with all of those. So we go to discussion point number 1, which is on page 8 of your handbook. And it has, what records do you need to keep for your specific business? Because every business is a little bit different. So take a minute to fill out, what detail records are you currently keeping? What do you think maybe you're not keeping that you should be keeping? And do you think maybe it's time for a system change, or is the system you're using now working? Maybe just list some pros and cons about what you're currently utilizing. This is all for you.
You know, I didn't realize until I filed my taxes
Mm-hmm.
in January that I was within $1,000 of breaking even last year. Until I did the sum for the year on my Excel spreadsheet, because I don't track it, like, you know, I don't do it as a, you know, where am I at year to date. And I got to the end of the year and I was like, wow, that's really close. I was very excited. So expenses are something that I probably need to work on. Keeping a better eye on them. Not that we're buying the horses, you know, tutus or manicures or something. We're getting, like, you know, basic care.
So maybe, would you have to raise your rate for,
I did this year.
because of that? Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot of.
Many factors went into that, but yeah.
Do you think if you had been keeping track of it throughout the year, and I'm sorry I'm putting you on the
Yeah.
spot, would you have made different business decisions?
Possibly, yeah. Like our discussion about that, you know, considering that, you know, I hadn't really thought about it in that manner until then, and it kind of challenged me to really think about that. So now, this year, I'm trying to keep better track of that and stay on top of it.
Part of my business model originally was to work for someone else, in other words, to be a temp employee, so that the record keeping would be held by the medical office, because it's incredibly cumbersome.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can pay American Diabetes Association to house the records on their server.
Oh, okay.
That's a business expense, though. It's quite expensive.
Right.
So there's no easy way to do it,
Mhm.
other than the double lockdown, or not keep records and just offer classes. Does that sound, because it's
Oh,
very
not keep
onerous.
medical records of your clients,
Correct.
if you just offer general
If
classes.
I'm just doing as an educator.
Mm-hmm.
Cuts a lot of my expense out, because I did look at, just essentially, it's kind of the same, you're in a therapeutic writing, but what I do is offer people actually real medical advice. However, if I change it to being education, it gets me out of the whole record keeping. Or there's so many rules on people's medical records, it's like banking.
Mm-hmm.
So these just
Mhm.
ugly or worse. Yeah.
But whatever system you use is still, it's a business expense, right? I mean, even if you just use your
Oh, yeah.
smartphone for record keeping, that's a business expense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you guys have anything you want to add? Things you're thinking about? No? Okay.
I think
Bob's
something like
in
in
that.
record keeping that has fallen through the cracks for me in the past, and a lot of people that I come in contact with especially, is small businesses or sole proprietors that are doing it all themselves, and they don't keep record of their time and what they're doing with their time. And
I
I
don't.
think that if you do, you can become a lot more efficient, because you'll see what you're spending the most time on and what you're not. And sometimes you'll figure out that you're not doing what you should be doing, or you're spending too much time on one thing and not another.
Yeah.
And so I personally had to keep a spreadsheet for myself, like this is what I am doing for this client, this is what I'm doing for that client, just to make sure it's evenly spread and I'm not wasting time where I don't need to be.
I mean, I don't wanna be like, and I'll use lawyers as an example. You know, they send an email, they'll bill you 15 minutes of time. I didn't wanna be like that.
No, but
if
it's
I
good for
kept
you to
record
know
of
where
my
your time is going.
Get sucked right into the
Because there's
internet.
be days like, where did my whole day go? I don't feel like I did anything, but you really did. So it's
You
know.
do, but yeah.
Well, and if you're doing a consulting business where you're trying to figure out, should I charge $30 an hour for my consulting, or should I charge $50 an hour? What is that? So then you keeping track of where you spend your time and how much are you really putting into a customer. You might think, well, I'm only seeing the customer for an hour to talk about their wedding, but perhaps before that you have 30 minutes of prep work, you have travel time to and from wherever it is you're going. All of those things are expenses and costs. It might be a soft charge, but still it's part of the cost and what going into your pricing model. So knowing where that time goes is important, because maybe
Maybe you figure out you're not making any money at all.
right.
You know?
I have to say, the 5 years I did home health care, that's essentially part of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
You're driving to someone's house in the traffic.
Yeah,
You're not getting paid an hour of your time. You're getting paid
for the hour you're there.
But that's how
Well,
you
you
build
get
your
paid.
cost structure.
by
Right.
the job, which is $65. If it takes 5 hours, then you're not making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how it works.
This module goes hand in hand with time management.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have all these records. How long do you keep them? Record retention is as important as actually keeping the records. And your business should have some sort of policy as to how long you keep things. We have a lot of retention record policies at the bank in general. So just sort of sitting down and developing yourself like a spreadsheet like this one. I'm going to keep time cards for 2 years. I'm going to keep all personnel files for 3 years after the person has left. You don't want to get rid of, I mean, someone's been with you for 20 years. Contracts, maybe you only want to keep them for 4 years after the contract has expired. Inventory, this one is good because the longer you keep your inventory records, probably the better you're able to plan your inventory going forward. 1 year of inventory gives you a good window. Probably 2 to 3 years or 4 years gives you an even better picture of what you're going through. Personal insurance records, checks and payables, invoices and receivables. Those are all things you want to decide and determine how long you keep. And it could be electronic form, it could be a paper form, it doesn't matter, but you need to come up with some sort of idea or system of how long you're going to keep it.
Heather, can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
As a banker?
Yeah.
Checks? You keep checks for 5 years?
So
I mean, you know the profit, so there, I mean,
this is one of those,
gosh, that point, right?
well, you might want to keep your bank statements for 5 years.
Oh.
Or, and typically for a small fee, your bank can pull any check number going back up to a certain amount of time for you if you were audited or something came up that you really needed to get a check from the past. So, and you don't even really get checks anymore. Banks hold on to all checks electronically anyways. So, but your bank statements, I might consider keeping for 5 years.
So the banks are pretty much scanning everything in,
Right.
And then shredding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, this is a good point too. Your state might have, our state and different states, depending on where you do business, have different statute of time limitations for lawsuits and other things. So you might want to check with your lawyer or maybe go to office hours where you can talk to a lawyer to learn what might be some of the requirements of your particular industry, because different industries have different lawsuits that could come up. But how long should you keep records for legal reasons? And those are different records, you know. So that is an important thing to check on regularly. So they give you kind of a nice little chart in your book, kind of like this. I thought was interesting. Tax returns, tax bills, and statements to keep permanently. I had always been told 7 years, but if you really want to be cautious, keeping them permanently isn't a bad idea. So that was something new for me that I hadn't learned.
Why do you think that is? Because I've heard 7 to 10 years.
7 to 10 is because that's how far back they can go to audit you.
Right.
How long?
7 to 10.
Right.
They can
that's
go back that far. That's when I
personal.
say at least that much.
Mm-hmm.
What about a business audit? Is it the same?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
7 to
7 to 10 years. So now that you know what you should keep, let's talk about some ways to keep them. Paper system. So you might have a file folder that you keep in a storage cabinet that you keep locked. I talked about maybe purchasing a fireproof file cabinet so that you don't lose those items. Something that you can lock, in particular for personnel records and other items. You might also have accordion folders. If you're looking at a tickler system where you're going to say, okay, every month I'm going to pull birthdays. I want to pull my customers' birthdays. So you have a file folder that has January through December, and each month you put your customers' birthdays in there, and then that month you go in and pull out the list to see who has a birthday. Also for your gross receipts tax, maybe you want to store in there your revenue, so you keep monthly ticklers or quarterly so you remember, okay, this month, oh look, I have to pay my taxes. Oh look, this month I have to fill out this form. And so that would be a system you could use with the big old accordion folders, which are surprisingly expensive.
I can't believe
For
that.
basically cardboard, it's kind of expensive. But it works, and a lot of people like it. It's a very visual way for you to actually see what's happening and just pull it out that way. So things that could go in your tickler system: quarterly taxes, license renewals. You can put your city of Albuquerque in the month that you always renew it. Any sort of licenses that you need to renew. Kendra for your horses, you could use it for when they need their shots, when they need to go to the vet, those types of things. Also, insurance reviews and renewals, any sort of upcoming bills. If you're not going to pay that bill until next month, then you could put it in that month and forget about it. Any sort of callbacks. Somebody calls you about a wedding and says, hey, we're not going to do this for 6 months. Can you call us back? You could put it in the tickler for 6 months from now. And then when you pull out that month, oh, look, I'm supposed to call Susie Q about her wedding. So those are all different reasons and things you could put in your tickler system. So a little bit more high tech. Perhaps a computer system. You could use it with your paper tools or instead of your paper tools. Some things you just need paper for. Anything that's a contract, licenses, that's all paper you need. But other things maybe not. Reasons you might use a computer system: it takes up less space, saves trees, it's faster and easier. A lot of government agencies now, you can file your licenses online. You don't have to send them paper forms anymore. But whatever system you use, make sure you have a backup. So that brings us to cloud computing. Lisa, you said you use SharePoint. You want to talk a little bit about that? Why do you like that? What do you use it for?
SharePoint is a web-based collaboration tool, and you can get it for free as part of an Office 365 Microsoft account, which also gives you Exchange email. I like SharePoint because, and I make all of my companies use it. I force most of you to use it with FatPipe and the Bylaws Center because it's a great way to share and collaborate on documents. You can manage who's got access to it. If someone's working on it, it won't let somebody else work on it. And it's backed up at Microsoft. They even have some special tools and implementations you can make for HIPAA compliant data. So it's a full service, very affordable, great for any size organization. No-brainer in my point of view.
I use Dropbox for a lot of things in organizations I'm in. It sounds very similar to SharePoint, where you have a lot of file folders and you decide who you want to share things with, and It can also back up any documents on your computer and use it as a second storage place for anything you think is important. I'm trying to think. Microsoft also has something called a OneDrive, where you can upload your documents and keep them, and you can access it from different computers. So maybe you're on your laptop at home, but you have a desktop at your office, and you can move things around and be able to access at different points. Trying to think if there's other. Mac has one called the Cloud, and iCloud. It's a similar product. So there's all different things you can do. Some of them are free. Some of them are free up to a certain point where they provide you so much storage, and then after that point they start charging you, and you can buy different plans. But just finding one that works for you and you feel comfortable with.
So have you used Google Docs?
Google Docs is another one. I know a lot of organizations that like to use that too.
I'm not sure how secure that would be. You know, I've not heard of it not being secure. Google Docs. You can set it to the world and then link it, and everybody in the world can look at a doc, supposedly. I've never tried to use it like if just the two of us were going to see it.
I don't like Google Docs, frankly. Their synchronization is not as reliable. John and I tried it before I got into SharePoint, and it was a nightmare. It's just not reliable.
It doesn't.
I would put something in the Google Doc folder, and it would be hours before he saw it.
He couldn't see it then. Okay,
Wow.
yeah. I think mostly I've just seen people do it like to the world and then put a link
Well,
like from Facebook or
that's
somewhere.
actually a great feature, and we use that a lot.
But that's
You know, when you're trying to
helpful.
share something publicly, it's a wonderful feature of Google, and it works reliably. You can send anybody in the world a link to a form, and Google Forms is great. There's a tool for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a tool on every platform and a tool for everyone to use. Just depends on your preference.
And what you're using it for. You want something, SharePoint works for you because you want immediate access back and forth between the person you're sharing it
Which
with.
you can have,
So.
technically with Google Docs and Dropbox and all the others.
But it's the one you like.
Well, Dropbox has been, people are using something called the box or Dropbox for all kinds of things now.
Mm.
And I find it forgets your password, or it's just.
There's glitches with everything, and
Yeah, that
and
one's
sometimes
got
it depends on your own computer system, and it's not the tool that you're using that's at fault. So
Right.
You can't blame anyone for necessarily for functionality. It could be the way that the user's using it. So.
Right.
So there's also cloud computing accounting. I know QuickBooks has kind of recently, I feel like it's done a lot more. Maybe I'm just paying attention more now that I'm a small business owner. But where you can get QuickBooks on your phone and you're able to do invoicing right from your phone. You don't have to be on your desktop. I'm sure there are other companies I can't think of besides QuickBooks that offer those same services. PayPal does invoicing too, doesn't it?
PayPal, there's FreshBooks. I mean, there's a variety of them out there, but.
And you can all do it from your phone. Yeah. So we talked about file hosting, which is the same as Dropbox, and those other ones it's accessible from anywhere. You can share large files. If your computer crashes, you have it in a secondary location, so you can save both on your desktop and on the cloud. So business software. This is something, like I mentioned, is a big business where people want to sell you software to manage your business and your record keeping. And some of it's all in one, some of it's sort of piecemeal. It sort of depends on what works best for you. Some of them can be very expensive, and some of them maybe not so much. Like maybe you just need Excel for spreadsheets versus a big $30,000 investment into purchasing some sort of tracking and appointment scheduling and website tools and all of those items. So this is kind of one of those things where you have to sit down and be like, what do I want my business to keep track of and what do I need help with? And then trying to find the tool that fits into it, I think works better than going and finding a tool and it doesn't quite meet what it is you're hoping it to do. So really trying to sit down and analyze what would make my business run smoother and faster, and what is it I need help with that I'm missing that falls through the cracks. And doing a good self-analysis before you go out and think, okay, well, if I just had this really shiny new tool, it's going to fix all of my problems in my business and it's going to run smoothly. Sadly, it doesn't work that way. But things to evaluate. Does it do inventory tracking? Do you need it to do inventory tracking? Maybe you don't care, so don't spend a lot of money on a system that says, hey, we'll do inventory tracking for you. Are you a manufacturer that you need to keep track of your parts and the costs of your parts, and also how much, there's a separate accounting for manufacturing that maybe your business system needs. If you're not a manufacturer, then you don't need that. E-commerce, are you gonna have a website? Are you gonna accept credit cards on your website? All of those things are important. Are you gonna maybe do scheduling on your website? Do you want your website to schedule your appointments for you? Or take dinner reservations, or all of those things. What are the specialized options that you need? And then Lisa's new company can help you design a website or business software that works for you. Email, communication with your clients. This is important in that this is also a filing system that somebody sends you an email, all of a sudden that's a record. And you need to save that. And probably save it separately, or keep it, again, be able to back upload, or have the Microsoft Office where it keeps it on the cloud in addition to on your computer, those types of things. So other things your business software program might want to do: track information such as clients, inventory, sales. Maybe you want it to track your employee timesheets. Some computer systems now, as soon as your employee logs into the computer, it's like, oh, they're here, and it starts recording their time. And then when they log out, then it quits recording it. So there are things like that. Frequently used for financial what-if scenarios. What if I charged more per hour for my horses? What if hay went up $50? How would I be able to absorb that? What if my marriages lasted 2 hours instead of an hour?
Right.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
What if all of those scenarios. So is that something your business software can do to help you sort of plan? What if I decided to add another product line? What would that look like? And then accounting, which might be separate from your business software. Maybe you need business software to track in certain items, and then you also need your accounting system to do all of your accounting features. So the advantages of using an accounting system is it helps you reduce errors, it can be faster. It could be inexpensive, or it could be expensive depending on what product you decide to go with. And hopefully it has you run a better organization. So we're gonna take a moment and think about, you guys can think about what your accounting system is, kind of describe it. How could it be improved? These aren't things you have to share. If you want to, you can. But just after talking today, what are some things that you realize, we're not keeping track of that, maybe we should start doing that?
Can it keep track of where your customers are finding you from?
Yes, but
Is that one of the things?
it's not an accounting system. I think there are plugins now on WordPress and that can keep track of
Okay.
that, so.
But that is an important thing. If it's an
It
idea,
is.
I mean, just because it's not accounting doesn't mean it's not something you should be tracking.
Yeah.
Because that is important to know.
It's critical.
Where are your
important.
customers coming from?
Yeah.
How to
But maybe
market.
it falls into
find them.
something I'm not
Yeah,
thinking of here.
How are they
Yeah.
going to find you?
Yeah.
and when they do find you, this is something I'm finding unusually, well, that Facebook somehow has ways to pigeonhole and tell you somebody's social economic group, and
Really? I have no clue.
I don't know how. But we're getting such software that can do that.
The time
I know if
management.
I
Yeah,
have more
I'll-
time,
Yeah, manage my
or
time.
if I schedule
Yeah.
time, put it that way, to do this, I would be better at it.
So then going back to your time management and thinking, okay, I need to schedule an hour every Friday to go through and do record keeping.
Yeah, I do that to schedule Facebook posts, so why wouldn't I do that to do this?
Yeah.
That would also be a good indicator if you need help. Maybe it's time and you don't realize it. Maybe you can't do it all. Sometimes businesses get to that point.
hmm
It's too big. You can't do it all by yourself. Next year.
So where are some other places you can go for help for business software training? A lot of the companies will provide software training, and just ask them, you know, is this something you're able to help train me on? And maybe they say, yeah, when you purchase our software, you get an hour free. I don't know. Some places do that. You might look before you purchase software and see, do they have any online tutorials or webinars that you can go to for free, so that if you get stuck, you can figure out how to use it. You can look on YouTube. Maybe there's some power users for something that they've posted videos online, sharing what they've learned as they've downloaded the software and what tricks and tips they have. Going to the SBA resource partners, perhaps SCORE. They have a lot of experience in those. Community colleges. And going back, I think West offers QuickBooks classes periodically. So looking at other resources, Axiom might offer some different classes too about specific software. Community colleges, I know CNM does a lot of Excel spreadsheets, like super advanced stuff that I don't know how to do. And there's other courses you can get through CNM and other places. Accountants, I like to call my accountant and say, I don't know what I'm doing. And bookkeepers and consultants, they can help you out too. So those are all different things you can utilize. But the most important thing is to start something now and to start something that works. And maybe your first attempt at doing this doesn't work out, but if you don't try it, then you don't know how to tweak it so that it works for you. So does anybody have any questions or additional thoughts?
You know, I just stumbled upon really the Hispano Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, they also have classes.
Great classes.
Mm-hmm.
They do?
Yeah,
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
I was very surprised and impressed.
Do you have to be a member, or do they give them to non-members?
They do for non-members, it depends on the class, and there's, I believe for some of them, the pay ones, the pricing structure is different for non-members, but yeah, and they have tons of free stuff. They're fantastic, wow, I did not know.
I imagine lynda.com has some good training videos as well.
Right.
And you can get access to Lynda, it's Lynda, if you have a public library card.
Yeah.
You go to the library's website and find out what their Lynda URL is and enter your library card. And they have great online training for all kinds of things. It's free.
I've been trying to learn to use software from the Albuquerque library. We do, it's a great benefit. It's just, it's a time scheduling thing that we have to really knuckle down.
I think that's where he took shortcuts, is because he would write down his training appointments on like a paper calendar, and then when at the end of the month we'd go back and I'd say, okay, well, you know, what was your income or whatever for your training sessions, he'd go back to the date that he did the training to be able to figure out how much he made that month. And I think it was to save time, and I said, just take a little receipt book. If they don't want the receipt, just write it in there anyway and flip it over, so at least you
Oh,
have
that's true.
all your receipts in one little place. You can get those little carbon copy receipt books from like Office Max or something. It's just really quick, the person's name, the date, the amount. He still won't do it.
I think if you're bad at record keeping, that's a really hard thing to train yourself to do, so it's good to have a partner who has skills, you know, that complement your own.
Thanks for saying that.
We're not trying to change who you are, we're just trying to
Well, and it is, as I say, if it's something you're trying to learn online with lynda.com, you really have to be your own driver on that. I mean, she's not gonna care. It's all recorded, people. And the nice thing about doing it that way is you can stop it.
Pause it and yeah,
Right.
rewind it.
And try it, like I'm trying to learn to do a software, and so I actually have 3 computers. So I have one doing Linda, and I'm doing it on the other one. Well, it's because it's, for me, it's very expensive to pay people to do a lot of training and stuff I need to know. So I was really delighted to find out we do have lynda.com on the Albuquerque Library.
I'll have to look at that. I'd never heard of it, so
It's,
that'll be good.
the link is not easy to find, but I think if you just go in and the box says where you enter anything, if you write lynda.com, I think that's how it finally came up for me.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't find a drop-down box. But we also have TREP.
Yes,
You know about TREP then, okay.
it's out. TREP is the, what does it stand? Something entrepreneur. It's out at Central and Unsor, right?
Well, but TREP is electronic database that you can access from the library as the starting place, and you can look up all the businesses in a particular zip code. You can look up all kinds of things.
Demographic kind of stuff.
I mean, I had somebody that was really nasty to me at Supercuts, and so I looked up the owner of the Supercuts. So I could make sure that I sent the complaint to the right person, rather than just blindly. You could do it. It took me a while in TREP, but you might be listed in TREP.
Okay.
Your name as a person at the bank. They take the data from Dun and Bradstreet and a bunch of places, and they create this whole.
Interesting.
It
And
is.
it's TREP?
And the libraries will teach you how to use it. So ask the librarian, because it's not easy. I went to a 3-hour class thinking that it would be useful for me to know how to use that. It's probably not as much as if I were trying to do like selling or some other business. but-
Services.
Yeah, because I kind of know the diabetes world. It's very difficult to market to physicians. That's
Oh,
why-
okay.
So
Right.
that was why I went to it, to see if there was a back door.
Well, as always, in the back of your brochure, if you would please take the time to make some comments about how you felt about the class today. I do take those very seriously, so please fill out the evaluation form. And that's all I have for today, if there aren't any more questions.
Straight by.